In some ways, the history of autonomy is sort of this continuous negotiation between technology and the real world.
I suppose if you're innovating, you've got to kind of always be ahead of the curve.
This idea of kind of putting the human at the center of the technology experience. At Toyota, we want to build technology that amplifies rather than replaces people.
I'm joined now for the final podcast of day one here at Move 26. I'm joined by Avinash Balachandran, who is the VP of Human Interactive Driving at Toyota Motor Institute. So great to see you on the podcast and thank you for joining me.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
So just a little bit about what you do at the Toyota Motor Institute, and then also we can start to think about what I know you've been speaking today at the conference as well. So I'd love to know a bit about you, Avinash.
Yeah, so the Toyota Research Institute is actually the part of Toyota that is tasked with figuring out what's next for Toyota. So we've been around for about 10 years. And 10 years ago, what was next was autonomous vehicles, and we worked a lot on that. And now we're actually in the phase of thinking about what's beyond autonomy and beyond autonomous vehicles. And so right now, our focus is to continue pushing on some advanced approaches for vehicle autonomy, but also looking at different paradigms of autonomy. So one of the things that we do as the world's largest manufacturer by volume is we sell cars to customers all over the world in all kinds of climates. And many of our customers are not in places where they have easy access to robotaxis or autonomous vehicle services. And so we're asking ourselves, how can we bring the benefits of autonomy to more people in more places sooner, have these systems work together with human drivers rather than replace them, so the driver is still in control of the car, and these AI and autonomy systems are able to work together with them, try to alert them to dangers, keep them safe, etc. And then beyond that, as the next phase of autonomy, we're spending a lot of time thinking about how that affects things like robotics. So we're looking at robotics in manufacturing and robotics outside the home in more unstructured environments as well.
So thinking about you then, Avinash, how did you get into this space? Did you start in automotive or did you come into automotive from other kind of tech?
Yeah,
space?
So, great question. I started my schooling in mechanical engineering and I've been in actually the automotive, or I should say more specifically, the autonomous vehicle space for over 10 years. I was one of the first engineers of the Uber self-driving car program. And then I kind of got the experience in the ride-sharing world. I moved to a new age OEM and then finally to Toyota, where I've been for close to 9 years. And my kind of interest has always been in the blend of people and intelligent machines. And, if you think about, one of the most intelligent machines that you or I will interact with on a daily basis, it's the car. And so that's kind of my entry point into this field in general. But as the field has evolved, these machines that we work with have got broader, we've gone beyond cars. We've thought about things like micromobility and robotics. And so my interest has kind of expanded in that direction as well.
I think it's really interesting to see how Toyota have kind of invested in, you talk about sort of micro-robotics, you're not just in vehicle engineering, you're in kind of a much broader space. And that you meant, I know your job is the human part of autonomous driving. So just expand a little bit about on that. I think I've heard a lot today about autonomy and also data, less so about the humans. So I'd love to kind of hear about that.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, at Toyota, we kind of are asking ourselves the fundamental question of how should AI and autonomy really come into our world and interact with us? And we feel like there's some key lessons that we can take from our history to help us with this. In particular, there's this idea of Jidoka, or human-centered automation. Now, if you're not familiar with Jidoka, it's actually a key tenet of the Toyota production system and has been core to the Toyota philosophy and DNA for over 100 years. And what it really says is that at Toyota, we want to build technology that amplifies rather than replaces people. And so when we think about autonomy, whether it's for cars or in robotics, what we're really looking to do is build systems that work together with humans, human drivers in the case of driving, to help kind of reduce the dangerous, the dirty, and sort of the dull work, allowing people to then kind of focus on higher value kind of tasks that make them excited and for which they can really put their innovation into. And so with cars, like I mentioned, we've talked a little bit about how we've moved beyond sort of full autonomy to this idea of autonomous systems working together with drivers. To give you an example of a new paradigm in that context, imagine a car that is not driving for you, but through its advanced sensing and AI is able to actually help you become a better driver. And so one of the examples or use cases that motivate this is unfortunately in the US, the largest cause of deaths for teenagers is motor vehicle accidents. And so as a parent, wouldn't it be great if you could feel like your car is not just keeping your child safe, but actually teaching them to be more confident and better drivers, right? So we're looking at different paradigms to kind of switch the roles of AI and people, where AI is not just replacing you, but it's actually adding some additional value to you. Similarly, in robotics, a lot of the in robotics, a lot of the dialogue has been around, how robots can replace people, for example, in the factory, where you can say, okay, a robot is now replacing a task that a person does. But we've been asking sort of, once again, a different question. Is there a world in which people can teach robots through demonstrations to kind of, once again, help them with the tasks that are, dirty, dull, dangerous, etc., so that they can focus on other things as well? So this idea of kind of putting the human at the center of the technology experience is sort of our focus at Toyota.
I love that. So I've never heard that before. Dirty, dull, or dangerous. That's really good. Where can robots replace the human for the jobs they probably don't want to do?
Yeah, so exactly. That's really true. What we're looking for is, to help with the jobs that people don't want to do. And also in areas where, like Japan, where there's an aging population, where it's hard to find people to do those things, right? And so what we want to do is provide solutions in that space while making sure that the solutions are really working together with people to give them more opportunity to express themselves in different ways.
That's incredible. So thinking about beyond autonomous, which I find remarkable that you're thinking like, we've done autonomy, like what next? And we haven't really kind of landed autonomy. We have obviously got autonomous vehicles on the roads, but I suppose if you're innovating, you've got to kind of always be ahead of the curve.
Exactly. Yeah.
So in terms of the Research Institute, what are you you mentioned earlier on, Avinash, that you're working at where do you support drivers where they probably wouldn't have access to robo-taxis. So what else are you keen to understand that's kind of human-centric?
Yeah, so I think in that area, one of our tenets is, can we make drivers have the skills of an expert when they need to in order to be safe? So to give you an example, the very best human drivers are pretty darn good. I've been doing this for a long time, and the best human drivers are really, really good. And in many cases will beat most autonomous systems hands down. And so what we're trying to do, as an example of our work is, can we learn from the very best human drivers? And at Toyota, we feel like we have a huge advantage here because of our DNA as a car company, working across several performance sports like NASCAR in the US or Le Mans in Europe. And so we are really trying to see, with our access to these really good drivers, can we understand the fundamentals of what makes these drivers so good, build those skills into an AI so that both our autonomous systems have the capability to access those skills when necessary, as do regular drivers. And to give you a specific example, a situation that a lot of regular drivers struggle with, particularly where I'm from in sunny California, is suddenly dealing with heavy rains or when there's ice on the road. And this is where car control is really important, and really good drivers are able to do that very easily. And so we're saying, well, imagine your car starts skidding. Imagine now that the AI is able to amplify your commands and help you maintain safety while doing that. And so we're really looking at ways in which, where are situations where regular average drivers struggle, and where can we kind of then insert AI to help make that a better, safer experience for you?
Yeah, I've got I have 3 teenage boys. I've now got 2 20-something boys and a teenage boy. So the worry as a parent when they get out on the road is like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? So, and you do want them to be safe. So actually knowing that, I think the biggest benefit of autonomous technology is those kind of safety features where it can detect a crash and brake for you, or it will intervene if it thinks that you're not going to. So that's kind of, quite cool. Thinking about you did a talk today, a fireside. What were you kind of talking about on your fireside today, and who were you with?
Yeah, I was with Giacomo from Bloomberg, and really what we were discussing is what's next in autonomy. And so if you look at the history of autonomy, you kind of see the story of systems that were working in very constrained environments where there were no people and no cars, to where there were some people and some cars, to more complex cities. But there's still a lot of environments that these systems don't work in. They don't work, for example, in heavy snow. And most cities in the world don't have access to robotaxis, right? And so in some ways, the history of autonomy is sort of this continuous negotiation between technology and the real world. And the real world is messy because we're in it, humans. And so, what we're trying to do, I think, in that talk is kind of lay out the story and kind of say, what's the path forward to helping us deal with this? And so at TRI, once again, at Toyota, we feel like being human-centered is really critical to this. And that's something we've learned from our experience. What we've learned, for example, with AVs is that, at the end of the day, society is not going to conform to the vehicle. The vehicle has to learn how to conform to the rules which people are used to. So to take an example, I guess in the UK, a roundabout, if you pause too long, people are just going to go by. You need a system that's able to understand the nuances there to move forward. And so being able to really understand the social context of driving is really important. And that's important for generalization. We also talked a little bit about some of the advancements that we're seeing in modern AI techniques, from improvements in generative AI and end-to-end learning, where you can go directly from pixels in a camera to actions on the road. And so we're thinking that some of these approaches could help us scale and generalize safely and more robustly. And so those are things that we're looking at as well. And then lastly, I talked a little bit about how we can learn these lessons in cars and apply them to robotics as well. Once again, this idea of, if you look at the story behind cars 10 years ago, we were close to peak hype of autonomous driving. And sort of all the narrative was, well, in 2 years, you won't need a driver's license. Now, Toyota was one of those companies that didn't actually say that. We always said it was a hard problem. But what do you see 10 years later? Well, we do have some self-driving systems in certain parts of the world. But really what we've seen is more and more driver assistance systems, technologies like L2, L2+, L3, etc., where there's more interaction between this AI and the human driver. And now if you look here in robotics, you're seeing kind of the same trend. So a lot of the narrative is around, well, robots kind of replacing humans in various tasks. But I suspect we'll see the same trend where really in the future, where we'll be is some sort of combination of people and robots working together and really trying to figure out what's the right thing for people to do and what's the right thing for automation to do. And that's the area in which we're working on. How do we create physical AI systems that more naturally and intuitively interact with us as people to make our lives easier and better?
I think it's really interesting. So we had a campaign recently where we talked about, like, the goal was about connecting with the road and like how the thrill of driving and everything else. And I think there is still that energy and that passion and that desire when you get in your vehicle, how it feels. I also think there are some people that will not want to drive and just want to get in a thing and be taken somewhere. So I think you're absolutely right. It's like making sure that you think about the human at the center of this as you design for them. And you're right. Whenever we go all over the world, I travel everywhere, and we always say, what do you drive here? And they usually say Toyota. I'm not just saying that. So because you have had such a history of reliability, parts are available. There's a great brand heritage there, and actually investing in the future is kind of critical, but still thinking about the human in the middle of that vehicle as you design for that.
And just to kind of build on that, I think one of the big lessons we've learned is it's important to really meet customers where they're at. One solution doesn't fit all. So robotaxis might be a really great solution in some cities, especially in the US. But in Japan, where you have really excellent public transportation, you've got this Shinkansen that runs between these cities. Maybe robotaxis are not as valuable as is, but maybe micromobility is, right? And Toyota, one of the things that we're really thinking about is solutions that are meant for the people in that area.
Yes.
And so it's not a one size fits all. And I think that's what makes us particularly influential in this area. And also the fact that we have access to customers in all of these markets. It really allows us to learn all these use cases to build solutions that work for everyone.
Yeah. Honestly, Avinash, thank you so much. I think it's fascinating listening to you and the work that you do. And I hope I get a chance to speak to you maybe again on a full podcast. I think it'd be really good to learn a bit more about what you're doing at the Toyota Research Institute, because it sounds brilliant. And thank you so much for coming to speak to me here today.
Likewise, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.